Well, Julie Mecikalski. I am retired as of 1 year, the end of this month, from being a teacher at New Lisbon High School, where I taught 35 years.
35 years in special ed.
All at New Lisbon in special education. I loved it. It was my passion. I needed a change. However, I didn't think subbing in the elementary school was going to be the change, but I loved it. And then I just got done teaching two weeks of summer school to kids getting ready for kindergarten.
Wow.
And that was fun.
Ages.
Yes, and I knew them all because I'd subbed in their pre-K classrooms, either as a teacher or a para. So yeah, it was a lot of fun for me. We did a lot of cool things, and it was 8 days because it ran 4 days a week. Right. And I told them the last day was my boohoo day, which is what my dad always said on the last day before, or the day that we kids would go back home. He's like, oh, it's boohoo day. So something I just kind of picked up.
So we actually, even though you're a special ed teacher and I have a history of doing special ed advocacy, that's not how we got to know each other. No,
it wasn't.
And we got to know each other as we both sat on the Juneau County Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. And then I worked with homelessness, and you had been working with homelessness in the schools. Mm-hmm. And so our friendships just birthed out of advocacy.
Right.
And understanding the problems within the community. I was a reporter, you were a teacher, and that's how we kind of came together. And my advocacy stuff, your advocacy stuff, it kind of intermixed. Yep. And that's how I got to know you. And then that's how come I offered you a job for summertime at the newspaper.
Which I stayed longer than summertime. I loved it there too.
Yeah, once it nips you, it tends to get in your blood and you can't get it out.
Well, and I'll tell you, if you were still there, I'd be there.
I was still there, I'd be a corpse on the floor.
Probably, yeah. Other health issues.
Well, that is, as you got to see, working at the paper is daunting.
Yes.
It was
very time consuming.
Very people, they would see me sitting at home and think, oh, she's just, she works a couple hours a week. It's like, no, you guys have no idea. It was from the time I woke up till the time I went. And you, even over the summer, it was from right? It was
pretty much, yeah. Because Tuesday was our deadline, so the paper would get out on Thursday. And even when school was happening, I was going in on Sundays.
Right.
Even Saturdays, just trying to get everything, especially if I knew it was going to be a big issue or something where I knew it was going to take up a lot of time. But, I was learning the ropes too with that. And I just had a great time with the paper.
It wasn't no 2 days were the same.
No. But, now that it is closed, I still hear from people, they wish the Messenger was going, because we at least covered the county news, which is what people wanted. They don't want to read about Portage. They don't want to read about Madison, things like that. And the only time you did with our paper is if it tied into something within our county.
Yeah.
And anyhow, yeah.
Yeah, we can do a whole show on community newspapers, local support that really doesn't happen when there's another major media stepping in the county who really doesn't do the work that you know what I'm trying to say.
Yep, I know what you're saying.
That all affected us. It wasn't our readership. We had a strong subscription, but it was the advertising where people thought, it's local, we know them, they'll stick it in for free while they're paying somebody else all these bucks.
Right.
And then we can't go home and pay our bills. It was that whole cycle. It kind of sucked the life out of me. I'll be honest.
I know, because there were times
about the paper, and there were things that just.
There were times you would have to leave for health reasons, but you were still at home doing a lot of the work, because I would send pages that I had finished putting together in the Dropbox, so that you could get everything finalized and or looked at or whatever, and then get it sent down to Madison for the publishing.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah, it sure was.
But in that work is we both have a case that's close to our hearts. And it's the Barbara Blackstone murder mystery of 1987. That's still unsolved. I wrote about it over the years, and once the very first time I looked into it, I think I was at the paper for a year or two. I got sucked into it, just sucked into it once you started realizing all the haps. And then you have an even closer connection with Barbara, because I didn't know Barbara. But I
didn't either.
But you have that New Lisbon connection. And so if you want to explain the connection that you have to Barbara.
Okay. I started teaching in 1988 at New Lisbon. And the year before, there were a series of abductions and murder of women. And right around Juneau County, Adams County, Sauk County areas. And it was, pretty scary, especially for women. But in any case, Barb was a very loved teacher. She taught business ed at New Lisbon. And I don't know the specifics. I know she went to get gasoline because she was mowing her lawn because they were having a family gathering the next day. And
excited, according to her sisters, everybody was in a good mood. The family was excited.
Her husband came home from his work and noticed that the car was in the driveway. The trunk was up. I think the gas can was still in there, but no Barb.
Right.
And it didn't look like a scuffle or anything. And it looked like she might have gone with the person. Well, in any
purse in the house. Her purse was on the table in the house. Yeah.
So Barb ended up missing. By the time she was found, it was a month later. She was found down in the Blanchardville area near Argyle, where she was from. So there was some suspicions there. It was investigated by Juneau County Sheriff's Department. And then when she was found, Lafayette Sheriff's Department was also involved with that too. I do know this happened 1 year before I started teaching. And I've talked to colleagues back then, and it was still fresh when I started teaching because I had students they were still grieving. And they would talk
at New Lisbon. I mean, just so people get an idea, because there's going to be people who don't know Juneau County, that it's a small rural county and all that.
We are West Central, right off Interstate 9094, a half hour northwest of Wisconsin Dells. Population is around 17 to 1800 plus whatever the 1,000 at the prison are. Because we do have a prison in our area.
Entire county, I think it's a 25, 26 population.
Yeah, 26. Around there, or close to 30,000.
It's a large county too, though. It's a large body mass county.
Especially from north to south. That's
right.
The length. It's more long than narrow. And anyhow, my students were talking. I just let them talk, and I'd found out things like the year before, she was found a couple of weeks before school started, and the media pounced on the school district on the first battling getting rid of the media so the kids could have somewhat of a normal day, because this was the first time they formally were going to be together since Barb's abduction. And I have always heard wonderful things about Barb.
So not a word about her, not one.
It was kind of weird because I went to New Lisbon a week before school started to kind of go through my room. And I'd found a master schedule. And when I looked at it, I saw her name and I gasped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she went here. I knew she was a teacher. I just didn't know where. And I've ever since then,
how did you feel at the time when you read that? Did it scare you?
It did, because and I'm not sure why. It wasn't like I was worried about being abducted, but I know during the time that these 3 or 4, I think there were 3 women that were kidnapped, abducted, murdered, and I'm hearing Juneau County. When I get to like going to visit relatives in Eau Claire, when I got to Juneau County, I'd hit the accelerator a little harder and hold my breath till I got out of the county. I wouldn't even stop at the rest area between Mauston and Lyndon Station anymore. It just creeped me out. And, there at the time, there was no why or how or anything as to what was happening. And so when I started, it was like, wow.
Yeah.
So, but I've always felt some sort of connection that I just never let her die, at least her memory. And one of the things that I got involved in, we started school before Labor Day. So the teachers union planned on building. The wind's blowing over here, so my curtain's
I thought you were pushing Randy or somebody else.
No, it's the curtain blowing. Yeah, it's nice and breezy here. But anyway,
you just saw me put my leg up and over. I had to move. I have to move my positions like every 20 minutes, just so you know. So if people see like a foot flying by, that's what's happening.
Not a problem.
Okay.
But the union president met with the teachers union in our school, and he said, okay, we're going to start construction. We built a memorial, the new Lisbon High School sign, and we had some help from Walker Stainless Equipment, which is now Wabash.
Oh.
And they had put together some nice metal, I don't even know what you call them, kind of like posts as part of the decoration.
Okay.
But the president sent out a letter and stuck it in all of our mailboxes and said, look, you guys voted that we were going to do this. We need help putting this together. So I'm like, well, I wasn't going anywhere because I had a bomb of a car at the time, just getting out of college. So I stayed home that weekend. I thought I might as well go to school and help. So here I am in this hole with a 60-year-old lady, and we're digging and digging because we had to have some depth to hold this, huge sign.
The county has a lot of dudes. Where were they?
More came. There were some guys, but it was Labor Day weekend, so a lot of people went traveling. But I rode in a pickup truck between 2 male colleagues to some place in the middle of nowhere to shovel sand in the back of the truck. And so
you're doing this for a woman whose life was taken away and we still didn't have answers.
But that's me. I would do that for anybody, anything. And so here I didn't even know this lady. And through the years, I felt like I knew her very well because I've always heard lots of stories. I had a colleague who told me she became a business ed teacher because of Barbara Blackstone.
Well, and look at Mark Andreessen. Wasn't he?
Mark,
talk about Mark. You actually met him, right?
Yep. And in the early years, Mark was a senior when I came to New Lisbon, but I think he was a freshman when Barb came. And Barb noticed, even though they were like in the very beginning stages of having computers in the business ed group.
Oh, yeah, because you're talking 85, 84 when he would have been.
Well, Barb noticed that Mark had some kind of advanced ability compared to the rest of the students. And she went to the principal to talk to him about this and said, would it be okay if I did some other things that would keep Mark challenged? And the principal's like, absolutely.
So like a gifted program almost before they were. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what she had him do. I just know that that Barb had gone to the principal and, it's like, wow, I have this kid who needs to be challenged. Can I do something more? Yeah. And so anyway, that was it. So I think Mark thought highly of Barb.
Well, that's why I brought it up, is because of the $25,000 reward.
I thought it was $15,000.
I don't know. I can't remember. I think I saw 20. I'll make sure before when I'll put it in the comments or something what the actual
I
is.
think
Reward.
I remember. I'm going to close this window a little bit here. I think I remember.
But he issued that a lot of years after her murder. It was, I think, 2011-ish around.
Maybe I think it was 2009, about the time that DCI was starting to reopen
the cases for the cards and all that, because I remember doing the story on the cards, and yeah.
I don't remember specifically. I remember Susan Simon saying on Channel 3 News that Mark was donating $15,000 because they were, Channel 3 was publicizing that this was being reopened, and Channel 27 did their stories. They did a 10-year, I think they did a 20-year, and then they came up to do the 30-year.
Can I just explain what that was? It was what happened was DCI got, I believe it was federal funding to reopen a majority of the closed cases in Wisconsin, and to take over and try to get awareness out there to get some scoops or tips and stuff. So they created a deck of playing cards, and then on the cards were these unsolved cases information, and they distributed around jails and prisons throughout Wisconsin. And Barb was the Queen of Hearts. So, and that's what actually got her case reopened, because it had a closed status. So once her case got reopened, it was 2009, 2011, in that range, police would no longer talk about it. We had no access to the files. It was back to hush hush. So I'm sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to explain that. So
in fact, I still have the voicemail. Let me see. I think this one is it. Yes. Because back in, I don't even know what year this was. It gives the date, but it doesn't give the year. So I know it's been a few years. I contacted DCI to see what was happening with this, and I got a voice message. I still kept the voicemail. It says, "Hi, Julie. This is Special Agent." Can I say his name?
Yeah, it's public information.
Hey, Mike Reimer with the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigation calling. Hey, I was forwarded an email that you sent to the Wisconsin Department of Justice regarding Barbara Blackstone. Just want to let you know that the case is very much active and is being investigated by a team of investigators. So just wanted to kind of put you at ease that it's not just, not being worked on. We are actively pursuing leads and so forth in that case, and following up on things on a regular basis. And I was reading my text or my voicemail. It goes on. He left a 53-second voicemail, but I haven't heard boo, because I'm like, can't you give an update?
Yeah, that's the same thing I've gotten day one.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And I was really hoping when I retired last June 2023, that was 36 years since Barb's death. And I was really hoping, I was talking to the then Sheriff Brent Olson about it, and said I was really hoping, because this started a year after I came, I was really hoping it would have been solved by the time I retired. Yeah. And he did too.
Yeah.
So
this is definitely a case that haunts us. Just so people are aware, there were some other strange occurrences in Juneau County in those years, prior and after. There was an attempted abduction in Mauston by the St. Patrick's Cemetery. There was, of course, I've written about this, and I hate saying this. They refer to her as Frozen Betty.
Yes.
She was found up by the over the border in Monroe County by Juneau County off of County Highway A. Is that A?
Correct.
Out there by Clifton? And
kind of over, because up there, you're up where she was way up on a bluff. And then you have your ravine, and they just kind of tossed her, but she didn't go that far because there was Amish kids walking home from school.
Right. And she had, if I remember right from all of my research, that she had the strangulation marks and all that good stuff. And that she was originally from Chicago. And nobody could figure out why she was there. And for people to understand, this is literally in the middle of frickin' nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's very isolated up there, going up this bluff on the highway, because you have farms and Amish houses down in the valley.
Right.
And then once you get up on top, you're on the ridge, it's flat, and you have a couple of Amish farms, but then you have other farms as well. So
and then in 91, 92, so this would be a few years after Barb was killed, there was another case in Lyndon Station called the sex slave case.
Yes.
That victim lived. The man who kept her hostage and repeatedly, brutally, and sadistically raped her over a period of time, he's in prison right now. And I believe he has been, before the case was reopened, I was told was a possible suspect. Because they would always say possible suspects and stuff.
Because it hasn't been official or anything yet.
And so there was a lot of creepy stuff happening around that county in that time frame. And then actually after that love slave case, it kind of all stopped. Go figure. But you know what I'm saying?
Talk about the suspect's van.
You can go ahead. I'll add as we go.
I don't remember all the details, but
I had a retired Juneau County sheriff's, I won't say detective or deputy because it really doesn't matter, contact me when we were doing was it the 25th anniversary? 30th anniversary? What was it? 30th anniversary.
30th anniversary.
And I had done a series of articles throughout the summer because I really wanted to focus on her, who she was, the circumstances at the time, all the different facets. Because, and as you know, we get tired of the fluff pieces from Madison and La Crosse once a year. You know, they'll be like, do this big promotional thing, and it's a fluff piece.
Yeah.
On their murder that gives no real new information, no investigation.
It's more just, hey, let's not forget.
Wanting our information and research, you know, because I remember the last time I had a reporter call me up. I was in Oregon at a friend's mother's funeral in the middle of the woods, and she kept pestering me for that research, you know, and it ended up being pretty much a fluff piece. Yeah. So that's frustrating for us.
Yes, it is. It is. And when you don't hear anything, I mean, they don't have to give details or nothing, but it's like if they have a suspect that they're focusing on, then tell us, we have a suspect we're focusing on. That's it. At least we know what they really are doing.
Yeah. And so the van, this person who was retired, he actually called me up and wanted to meet with me because he was one of the first people on the scene when Barbara Blackstone was killed. And he had a lot of stuff to get off his chest. And this person told me while he was literally crying, and this was a law enforcement person, that how the case was screwed up from the beginning, how there was all these things that happened, and nobody's talked about it. Nobody's done anything about it. And it included this van when that person who a few years later was arrested and convicted for the sex slave case had been pulled over and had articles in the back that were, I believe how he put it was a rape kit. All sorts of porn in the van, you know, S&M type stuff. And a stench.
And a what?
A stench. There was a stench coming from the back of the van. You know, this is one of those old creeper type vans to begin with. So it's like creepy enough to begin with. But it was winter. A call came in or something happened. and he could no longer stay with the van, but was told that they were going to secure the van. And, for evidence.
Secure, impound?
Impound.
Yeah.
You would think that means in a locked area.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a locked area except those who had access in the building.
So where did they impound this lovely van? Do you remember?
What's that?
Do you remember where they put the van?
Yeah.
To hold it for DCI?
Fire station?
In the fire station and didn't tell anybody? And the next day there were firemen all over the damn thing, so DCI couldn't do anything with
it. Was contaminated. Yeah. 1987. Learn a lot.
Yeah. That was, and this man's telling me this in tears.
Jeez.
And he brought up Frozen Betty. He brought up investigations and how they went to Chicago and talked to people who knew Betty and this convicted killer or convicted sadistic rapist sitting in prison for the love slave right now. So they obviously were connecting all these dots all along.
Yep, exactly.
How they panned out, I don't know, but all I know is it tapered off when someone went to prison.
Yes, it did. It did, because we haven't had hardly any up here. Right. There have been some murders, but it hasn't been necessarily a random situation. Usually somebody was targeted or whatever. There have been a couple that I know aren't solved. One involved a male up in the Necedah area. I don't know specifics anymore other than it wasn't solved. And that's unfortunate. Really unfortunate.
It's really unfortunate because, one, the county's still grieving it. There's people, you bring her name up, man, it sends them back to 1987 and they're still grieving. That's how, this is a county where families stay for generations. So she may not have been from there originally, but she touched those generations of families.
And I didn't know her, but I was kind of obsessed with her case because I lived in southern Wisconsin at the time. I was attending college at UW-Whitewater, so I was living in that area. And I remember watching the news, the media up here, and reading the State Journal about this. And it's like, I just had so much empathy for her and really hoped she wasn't in a situation where she suffered.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah,
but
it's tough.
I know you and we road trip down to the Blanchardville area.
Bring that up. You talk about it because I don't want people to think I'm out of my mind if I say
no. Well, no, because I witnessed things, and we were able to find the road. So we went one way. Well, it was pretty open and farmland, so we thought, no, this can't be it. So we turned around and went the other way on the road. And we get to like this wooded, dark area, and all of a sudden you're like feeling weird, and the hair is standing up on your arms. And then we got.
I'm like, I think this is it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we really didn't know where it was. We were just kind of scouting it out as part of our investigation. And then we got to the intersection. I think it was Highway F. And it's like, now what do you think? And you said, geez, I wish there was a coffee shop with a bunch of old men that just sit and we could chat with them. Well, there were a couple of people on ATVs and then an elderly gentleman on a UTV. So we're like, let's follow him. And he goes up this driveway, and it's like no trespassing sign, but he goes up there. And it's like curves up a hill and goes straight back, and there's a ranch house back there. And then it's kind of like some farmland or prairie, whatever. And as I said, what do you think, Eva? And you're like, follow them. So we did. And we met, there were two vehicles that met us on this long driveway. Both drivers waved at us. Right. Well, finally, we park. And I went right to the elderly gentleman, introduced myself, told him what I was doing. And I said, we're investigating or doing some checking on the murder of Barbara Blackstone. And we understood she was left around here. And he looks at me and says, I'm lost.
I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah.
That's
I
what
mean, it was just really weird.
Why I'm here.
So then we decide, let's go to Blanchardville and get some lunch. So we find this little cafe, and I had to use the restroom. And you sat there and talked to the waitress who was 18 years old. And I come back and I remember seeing you looking rather pale. And oh, I should mention, as we were going back, the hair went up on your arms again. You're like, look at this. And then we got to the cafe. Well, as I said, I was going to the restroom and I come back and Eva, you just look so pale. And I'm like, what? And she says, I was telling this girl about Barbara Blackstone. And she says, oh, yeah, it was in this area where the hair on your arm stood up. And she said, we normally didn't have things like this happen. So it was a big deal in the area. And she said, every time our mom and dad took us on the road, they'd point out that's where they found her.
Right.
And we were like, wow.
That was such a weird day. And I got goosebumps.
Yep,
right
you
now.
sure did.
I got them right now. I feel like Barb is always around us trying to guide us through this.
And then that same trip, while we were down there, I found out Barb was buried in, I think it's Evergreen Cemetery. It's called in Evansville.
Right.
And so we went up, you and I were looking for her headstone, and it wasn't conspicuous. It really took a little hunting, but we found it. And she's buried 100 feet from my grandpa.
Yeah.
If even that far. I mean, that just, I'm like, all these weird things that have happened to you and me. It's like,
there's
I can't.
So many weird connections, like with the love slave connection, why he's sitting in prison. That girl, that she survived the incident. She later died because of trauma induced, you know what trauma does to people.
Yep.
So it took her life very young and away from a couple of kids too.
Yep.
Yep. But she grew up where I grew up in Illinois, down by Des Plaines, Illinois, in the same damn neighborhood at the same time.
Wow.
And just having all those weird, and then he used to live not far from where my best friend, when I was 18, 19, 20, when he would have been active.
Was he in Des Plaines, or was
he was Skokie?
Skokie.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That's where in the 70s, there was a case of 2 teen girls that were kidnapped. Supposedly. This is all supposedly because it never ended up going to court. The charges ended up being dropped because the parents of the girls wouldn't allow one of the girls to testify. Because, you know, this was back in the 70s.
And that's unfortunate, because if that would have happened, things would have been totally different up here.
Right. So just all these weird connections to, I mean, even Mark Andreessen. Now I'm battling Medicaid and healthcare and all this stuff and doing all my, and I'm seeing his name constantly.
Really?
Yeah. Well, he's into AI and healthcare too. Him and Andreessen and Horowitz is his investing. I believe that. Yeah. They have a lot of things, and they even have a little partnership, I believe, in Florida with the company that I'm kind of drawing attention to right now.
Sure.
So it's a little weird. It's like keeps getting slapped in my face about Barb.
Yeah. It's like, no matter, you've moved, you left after paper closed and went to Memphis, and then relocated in Northern Illinois. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter where you were. It's like Barb's following you or something.
Yeah.
And
so weird.
Exactly. And there are times I'm feeling something. I'm not forgetting her. When people ask me about her, I tell her what other people have told me. And it was always high praise, especially the students that I had my first year of teaching. It was high praise, and several kids went out looking for her because they had people in the area out looking for her. And then the one who became a business ed teacher told me she wanted to go out and look for her, and then her parents said no, they wouldn't let her leave. So just kind of creepy. I just, really think highly of Barb. I wish I knew her just because I always heard, as I said, so many wonderful things about her. She was highly respected. We did hire, it was interesting, a couple of years after we started, we hired another business ed teacher because Barb's replacement left and then that replacement left. And then we had two business ed teachers at the time. So this gal actually replaced a gentleman who had been teaching for several years. Well,
Okay.
the school librarian wouldn't have anything to do with this gal because she looked so much similar to Barbara. And the librarian and Barb were pretty close because Barb's room was right next to the IMC. And I mean, in time, the librarian warmed up and, was fine, but it just was kind of interesting. And I remember the time a coworker told me that he saw this, he was leaving school for the day and saw this woman stoop down behind the New Lisbon High School sign. Well, we have a plaque back there that's in memory of Barbara. And he got closer and started getting spooked because he thought it was Barb's ghost. And it ended up, I think, being a sister, he said, who heard about this and wanted to come up and see it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, she still has family out there who, they're getting older, I'm sure.
Exactly. Because I think she was the youngest of the sisters.
Yeah.
If I remember right.
She wasn't originally, even though she lived in Illinois, but she married her husband. I think they met at college in Indiana.
Ohio. She went to Ohio State.
Okay, yeah. I knew it was over there somewhere.
Yeah, that direction.
And then now, obviously, people, the very first person they talk about is always the husband. Whenever you have a case like this.
That's usually the case. Husband, boyfriend, significant other of some kind.
Whatever. Yeah, they look at the family first. That's and I've heard his name tossed around, but then the people close to it, and I've never gotten the feel like, he might have had one or two strikes against him in his background, like we all do. You dig deep enough, we all got something. But nothing so much that he was guilty.
There was nothing there. They did check, but he had his alibi and he was working out of town. And
the always supported him too, if I remember right.
They did not believe. And I think one of the things was he moved out of the area after Barb had died. Pardon?
Yeah. He stayed in Wisconsin, but moved out there, which who could blame him at that point?
And I think when you had interviewed one of the sisters, she had said, Barb said at one time, if something were to happen to her, she could see Tom being a recluse, which is pretty much he won't do interviews. He wants nothing to do with this. I don't believe he's ever remarried.
You know what's kind of interesting now that you bring that up? I've tried reaching out to him, trying to find him, pinpoint, sending emails to what I find, stuff like that. No response. And I understand, that's got to be a very traumatic, I don't want to drag,
And he's probably thinking, it's been 30 years, move on. But
also Mark Andreessen, I've reached out to.
Yeah, Mark.
So being the student, and why did you do the
You're cutting in and out, Eva.
It's interesting. Huh? Am I? Okay, is that better?
You're cutting in and out. I know you started out talking about Mark, and I don't know what you said.
Oh, I said I have also reached out to Mark Andreessen, and I've always gotten the receptionist cold wall. You know what I'm saying? Thank
you for reaching out, but Mark is not. Yeah.
He's too busy. I travel and stuff like that.
Yeah, I heard a lot of students and some adults state they thought it was the husband that did this. And after, you've talked to people, we've talked a lot about this. You wrote articles in the paper. You did a 3-week series back in 2017 for her 30th anniversary of her death.
Right.
And looking back, based on what I was hearing, I thought, yeah, that could be. But especially when they didn't see a scuffle, it looked like she must have willingly got into somebody's car.
Right.
But in any case, when he packs up and moves out of the area and stays quiet and doesn't respond to interviews and such, I can see why people think that, but they need to consider the fact that the sheriff's department in the investigation, or DCI, ruled out the husband. He was not.
Exactly.
He had an alibi.
So,
he was working.
right. I've heard every name connected to her murder, I think, that you could possibly have heard. And then, like I said, it's kind of hard. People don't want to really talk about it too much. Especially people close to it. It's like when the first time I ever covered it, it was one of those, I went to the sheriff's department, talked to Sheriff Olson. I think I'd been at the paper for maybe a year or two. And back in the days when I was getting $20 an article, so I had to go find stories everywhere. And I asked Sheriff Olson for the cold cases, and he started going over them all, what few there were. And what is it? The child that came up missing in that one house that burnt down, and they always thought that was a kidnapping. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yep. Another unsolved from 1947, I think.
Yeah, and then we have that Nisita murder, that male. Yeah, unsolved. Yeah. And it was Barb. Those were the ones. And I looked into the Bryant one, the child one, and did a story on that. But Barb's, man, hers sucked me in. So it was a rabbit hole for me.
Well, and
I still think about it all the time.
Yeah, I do too. And it's interesting for somebody I've never met that I have spent so much time in the last 36 years thinking about this lady. Actually, let's go with 37, because I was thinking about her and praying for her when all this started.
Right.
And it just breaks my heart that there hasn't been closure, there hasn't been justice. It's just terrible. And I'm like, DCI, if you're not figuring things out, get cold justice in there to help out. In fact, one of the
Andreessen, can you pull some strings, Mark Andreessen? Get some cold justice. Let me interview you. Let me see what it is. Why did you give that $25,000 reward? What was so motivating for you to do that? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because I searched a lot of information on her to see if there's anything out there, and you hope you can pick up, maybe something he mentioned
different,
but nobody's really talking about it.
Because we purchased newspaper access, going through old newspapers, but the problem was some of the newspapers you wish you could find weren't there. And I did go to the public library in Mauston, and I copied every article I could find, and that was on microfiche. Oh, that was a pain in the butt, but everything I could find, I copied it. And in reading it, still not finding, a lot of it just kind of repeats where they're at that point and what happened from the beginning, and it doesn't really add a whole lot of new information. And of course, if it was handled poorly at the sheriff's department, nobody's going to come out and say that, because it could be somebody's butt.
Yeah. Well, all you have to do is read the articles from that time to go, they waited how long? They allowed people just to conduct their own search and trample all over the property without securing it.
Didn't the source that you got a lot of information from, that member of the retired member of the sheriff's department, didn't the sheriff threaten him that if he were talking anymore, his retirement would be revoked?
He threatened me with
He threatened
that
you. Okay.
after we published the story.
Okay.
I said, go ahead, because I'll make another interesting article.
That's what I love about you.
So,
Because you've done that before, but not with the sheriff's department necessarily. But yeah, I thought, what was he going to threaten you with?
He wanted me to stop, I think, reporting and talking to all these, because he wasn't the only one who contacted me. I had 2 other former Juneau County, so 3 altogether.
Yeah.
And these are men who, well, the one, he's a very nice, sweet man, but the other 2 don't particularly like me. And they still contacted me with information. So what does that tell you?
Yeah, I know.
It was all consistent. All their stories lined up.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's unfortunate. And it's like, I know the one that talked to you, he was a younger guy back then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A lot younger. And I always wonder what it's like to be a police officer and come upon something like that, or then have to, bones are found and you have to start investigating. I was on the ambulance service for 20 years. I saw a lot of stuff. And for the most part, I could just put it in the back of my mind and forget about it and not be traumatized. But I never saw, I saw a couple of gruesome situations, but nothing like, and that's their job. And then when, there are others, that it's just unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It really is. And it's unfortunate that we're still talking about Barbara like this. So if anybody has any information out there on the unsolved murder of Barbara Blackstone, 1987, Juneau County, Wisconsin, contact the Juneau County Sheriff's Department. And then send me an email and let me know you did. Okay? That way we can make sure information is being followed up on.
Yeah. I just, hold on a second.
I don't want to know your information. I just want to know that you passed it on.
Let me see if I can do this here. Where are we here? It's been a long time since
I'm telling you, man. You should have seen me trying to get ready this morning. I'm like, how did I do this every day of my life?
I wanted to show a picture of Barb. And
yeah,
it's been
I'll
a
be
long
sure.
time.
I'm gonna edit this probably, because now it's 2 videos. Hopefully, I hope I didn't lose that first one, or else I'm gonna ask you to do some of this slipping.
I don't mind.
Okay.
It's good to see you anyway.
So, I just didn't want to make us, because it was good. We had a nice chat about her, and I really hope we didn't lose it. So fingers crossed. But I will edit it. I'll put in her poster, all that, the card and the number, and I'll put links down on YouTube for it too.
And we do have a Facebook page for Barbara.
Right. But I lost my old Facebook profile, so I have to ask for permission now to join the damn thing I started. So you're gonna have to
okay. Yeah. And I will make sure you're connected. So
okay. Yeah, I have to do
it. That was a really great site we had. Let me see here.
It keeps her name alive.
Yep. Which we need to. Until she's found, or until it's solved. She's been found, but until it solves.
So what else you got going on, Julie?
I'm enjoying my summer, something I didn't get to do last summer.
That's good. What are you doing?
I just got done with 8 days of summer school and had a terrific time. And then I think I'm going to visit my mom. She lives up in Eagle River.
Nice.
And spend some time up there. Some of my family, if not all of my family, will be up there. I'm not sure. Nice. But I haven't gone up there in a long time on the 4th. And then eventually I'm going to be taking a road trip out to the Washington, D.C. area to visit friends and
nice.
do some sightseeing along the way.
That's cool.
I'll go at my own pace. Maybe I'll end up over in your area again and can reconnect.
Well, not that far.
No, you're not that far. And I think I'm going to go down one way and come back a different way because there's some things I want to see. So there's going to be some back road driving. So.
Oh, cool. Nice. Maybe we will visit Blanchard.
Hey, that could be an option.
That could be an option. I might have a few people I'd want to bring with, and maybe we can like zone in.
Well, and I was interested. I really wanted to go to the library and see what their newspapers said, but we went on a Saturday and they were closed.
Closed, yeah. They were closed.
So, maybe during the week we could road trip.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because I'm not giving up on her. She won't let me.
No. And I think there are some things that come about that I am thinking she's trying to get me to know something. I just haven't figured it out yet.
Pay attention, but don't focus on it too much. Just, because then your ego gets involved. You know what I mean by it? You start wondering that you fill it in. But
because I really think she led me to her burial site.
She led us that entire day.
Because that just was so weird with all of the headstones facing the same way.
We were right there.
And then hers was backwards.
Right.
And then her dad, I think I want to say sideways. She was buried closer to her dad than her mom.
I think so too, yeah.
Because her mom was buried next to her brother, and they were both in the military.
And we
died first.
Found it just like that.
And Barb's father was still alive when Barb died. And he thought because she was brought back to her hometown area, even though Blanchardville wasn't, it was Argyle, and I think that's 8 miles away. He thought maybe she said she had some money in her bank down in Argyle, and they went that direction.
I think it's a good way to throw off the police and make it seem like it was someone she knew.
Yeah, it's weird. It's really weird, and they haven't been able to find the person. But we're thinking maybe there was 2 involved.
Well, that's what I was told. I forget by who. I think it was someone from DCI many, many moons ago. That the way that they found the skeleton, she was carried out there and laid. What's that position called? Spread eagle.
Yeah.
Barb was not a small woman. She was
she was tall.
Yeah. So a woman at 6 feet tall, even though she was thin, she's still going to weigh something there,
Sure. Exactly.
So, there's in considering how far up it would have been over there.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the terrain. You would have needed at least.
Well, and I would think if she was dragged, they would have seen tracks or something.
Oh yeah.
Or however they, that. I don't know. It just
like the dark of the night, 2 guys. Yeah, that's what it feels like. I mean, after especially seeing where it was in that area over there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's not a busy traveled road around there, but it gets enough for an area that size.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've heard a lot of different theories over the years, and I've gotten a lot of interesting phone calls. Another thing I want to touch up base on with you, because I have your attention, Judge Roemer.
Oh yeah, nice man.
Yeah,
I really, really like Judge Roemer.
I did too.
And I even
had huge respect for him. Yeah.
Yep. And I had testified in court. I was subpoenaed as an EMT witness a couple of times, and just very professional. And on the side, I've known him for years because his oldest son attended New Lisbon. And I've known him for years and years, and would have nice conversations, and he'd fill me in on what's been happening. And the last time I saw him was after a trial, and you know the trial because you're the one who kind of spilled the beans.
Oh,
Okay. Huh? The funeral director?
Oh, that one. Oh,
Yeah.
And
he came out of the building, and I think we were doing at the Presbyterian church across the street from the courthouse. We were from that really bad apartment fire. We were collecting stuff down there. Well, as I'm walking to my car, because I parked in the parking lot at the courthouse, he came out and he just looked white. And he had just finished, or that trial was finished, and the verdict came out, and he was retiring. And told me, I said, that's going to be a loss for us. And unfortunately, he was murdered.
He was assassinated. He was literally assassinated. And again, DCI, well, they know who did it, obviously.
Obviously.
But they were supposed to update us with more information because I remember that they would update the case because whether or not he was connected to other groups that were, because he had a list targeting other politicians.
Well, yeah, it was rinky dink, and I don't mean it derogatory, small town Judge Roemer. And then there was like Mitch McConnell and the governor Gretchen.
Yeah.
What's that?
Nancy Pelosi. Yeah.
If that is her name. But yeah, some big name politicians. But I think it had to do with Judge Roemer sentenced him to prison. So in a way, he was kind of
20 years before. 20 years.
Yeah, it was a long time before. So that was his connection with Judge Roemer. And that was the first and only one he did, because that standoff, I don't know how many hours that was. And one of his sons was in the house at the time this was happening, and he was able to escape through a window and run to the neighbor's house. And
that poor, I just can't even.
I just was sick when I heard about this.
I was sitting in Memphis and I broke down and sobbed. I mean, because Judge Roemer's in so much part of my life because of what happened in my marriage, my criminal case against my ex-husband for domestic violence. Judge Roemer oversaw all that. He oversaw our divorce. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in court he literally watched the kids grow up, and he used to always ask me about Kyle and Justin because he was worried about him because he knew what happened within our marriage. And he was just that kind of I didn't always agree with him, but you know what? That's okay.
Yeah. He was, I felt, very fair and a kind-hearted soul.
He was funnier than hell.
That too. He kind of had a dry sense of humor. When we would do our reality fairs in Mauston High School, and we had the 5 high schools in the county participate, the juniors usually, or whoever the school sent. And we would always, or most of the time, have him. If he was available, he would man the government table. And it was funny because you'd have the police officer roaming around issuing tickets, and sometimes they were OWIs, and they would have to go before Judge Roemer because they had to visit every table, even if they didn't get a ticket, just to hear what goes on. And Judge Roemer, sometimes I think he was kind of humorous, but merciless with some of those kids. And we definitely tried to target kids that we thought could be a potential down the road, that we wanted them to find out this is what it's going to be like. And if he wasn't there, then we had Paul Curran and his sister Catherine Orton. Paul's also a judge. So, and sometimes those two guys would split it. One would take the first half, the other would take the second half. And
nothing but Roemer had the humor.
Yeah. Well, Paul does too. In fact,
it's a little dry.
I've been in his courtroom as well. And that was when I was in there, it had to do with a child custody situation. And the child was one of my students. And even though I taught high school, I even asked the attorney representing him, I said, isn't he old enough to make his own decisions? He was like 15, 16 years old. And he said, yeah, but, there's 7 things that the courts look at and the guardian ad litem looks at. And anyhow, it was an interesting situation because it ended up going to the dad where the boys were living anyway. And dad had an attorney, the attorney and dad wear suits. Mom's by herself representing herself. She brought some of her family members that didn't, I don't think, dressed appropriately for court. And she had them run dad into the ground. And then when it was the other turn, the attorney for the father said, well, I've never been in this situation before. I motioned for dismissal. And the reason was, as Judge Curran came out, he said, look, I've heard every reason why dad shouldn't have the boys, but I have not heard one reason why you should have them. You live out of state. I don't know your community. I don't know the schools the boys would be attending. I don't know your significant other who lives with you. And, that was it. I know she couldn't afford an attorney, so she represented herself. But I was so glad for dad because, I was subpoenaed, and it being that the Judge Curran dismissed it, I didn't have to testify. And I'm looking at the school psychologist with me because she was also subpoenaed. And we're like, okay, this was fun. But at the reality fair, Paul was kind of a clown, joking around with me and his sister, because he's like, yeah, Kathy was a straight A, prim and proper, and I was kind of like the class clown. And he just makes me laugh a lot. I really like Curran.
I like Curran. I mean, yeah. Roemer was my favorite, though. I'm going to be honest, and no offense against Stacy Smith either. Roemer was my favorite judge. He really was. Sitting in that courtroom, those trials get boring. Okay, you know what I mean? There's a lot of procedural stuff. It's not high drama all the time.
Not like Matlock or Perry Mason done in an hour.
You definitely fall asleep here and there. But yeah, he'd have a way to break up the monotony, and he'd make a joke and wink at you at the time, or somebody will say something and what they said was hysterical but not meant to, and you're trying not to.
I have a close friend who has been close friends with the Roemers since we started teaching. She and I taught at the same time, and she had Roemer's oldest son as her student, and he was severely developmentally disabled.
Okay.
And Beth, my former coworker, she would do respite for the Roemers. And she thought so highly of them. She lived kitty corner from them. And she and her husband would do things with Judge Roemer and his wife. And I sent her a text message when all this came to a head. And I said, just letting you know, I'm thinking about you. And if you need anything. And she says, this is so hard. And she was very devastated.
It was devastating. And I got a little frustrated because obviously I posted something in his memory, blah, blah, blah. And then I got hounded by Madison media because they saw it on my, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's how that happened. And I kept telling him, I don't know if I should be the one I don't even live in Juneau County anymore. I mean, I knew Roemer and I explained that, and they insisted upon it. So I did it, but it was hard.
Yeah. Yep. I know.
The whole thing was hard. So is there anything you want to cover?
Well, you talked about my health journey. I thought we could do that another time because that could be lengthy.
Yeah, and you had something rare, right?
I was diagnosed with blastomycosis, which is a fungal infection. Not exactly sure how I acquired it, but and it's rare, but the extreme rarity was, for me, it spread to my central nervous system, aka my brain.
Right.
And
So it was all
as I said.
neurological symptoms.
Yeah, and it's funny because I never thought I was sick. In fact, just before I was admitted, I was sleeping 16 to 20-hour days.
Oh,
and I wasn't eating because I get up, I go in the kitchen, and it's like, I don't feel like cooking. Okay, I don't need to eat. And I'd go back to bed. And finally, my best friend, who I brought with me when I saw my provider, took a lot of notes, and she followed up. And sometimes she and I can go months without communicating. And she followed up, and she was like, oh my gosh. And she called my provider, who said, get her to ER in La Crosse now. So
who was that? Who did that for you?
My provider?
No, your friend. Who was
my
that
best
guy?
friend? I don't want to give her name.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just because she's private. So,
gotcha.
But she was very involved, and she called my brother Jeff, who lives in Eau Claire. My brother came down to pick me up. He called me, says, I'm leaving Eau Claire. I'm coming to get you, and we're going to the ER in La Crosse. And I'm thinking, why? I'm not sick. I'm just tired. And then as I look back, I educated myself so much between talking to my med team,